The flashing lights of cameras nearly blinded Sienna Monet as she stepped onto the red carpet. At 27, she was at the peak of her modeling career. Her chocolate brown skin glowed under the spotlights, and her high cheekbones and full lips made her the face every designer wanted for their campaign. "Sienna, over here!" shouted the photographers, desperate to capture her image in the flowing emerald gown that hugged her tall, slender frame. She smiled, that perfect, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. The smile that had launched 100 magazine covers but hid the real woman underneath. "Who are you wearing tonight?" called out a reporter, thrusting a microphone toward her. "Valentino," Sienna replied, her voice smooth and controlled. "And the proceeds from tonight's event go to the Fashion Forward Foundation, helping underprivileged youth break into the industry." As she moved along the carpet, her assistant Maya whispered in her ear, "He sent another gift. It arrived at the hotel this morning." Sienna's smile faltered for just a moment. "What is it this time?" "A diamond tennis bracelet. There's a note asking you to wear it tonight." Sienna shook her head slightly, careful not to let the cameras catch her irritation. "Send it back, just like the others." Later that night, in the quiet of her hotel suite, Sienna kicked off her heels and peeled away the layers of her public persona. She unzipped the designer gown and hung it carefully in the closet before slipping into her favorite worn sweatpants and an old t-shirt that had belonged to her grandmother. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, holding a small velvet box. "This is the fourth gift he sent this month. The man doesn't give up easily. Beck Wilder doesn't understand the word no," Sienna replied, pulling her long, dark hair into a messy bun. "Men like him think everything has a price tag." "He's worth billions," Maya reminded her, "and he's not bad looking." Sienna walked to the window, looking out at the glittering New York skyline. "My grandmother didn't raise me to be impressed by money. She raised me to value what can't be bought." The memory of her grandmother, Eloise, sitting at her old sewing machine, filled Sienna's mind. Those strong hands that had stitched together not just fabric, but a life for them after Sienna's parents died. Eloise had been a seamstress for the wealthy, but she never let Sienna forget that true worth wasn't measured in dollars. "Rich men want trophies, not partners," Sienna said quietly. "And I refuse to be anybody's trophy." The next morning, Sienna was scheduled for an interview with Style magazine. The journalist, a woman named Lena Roberts, had a reputation for asking tough questions. "So Sienna," Lena began once the cameras started rolling, "you've had an incredible year. Cover of Vogue 3 times, campaigns with every major designer, and now I hear you're launching your own line of ethical clothing." Sienna nodded. "Yes, it's something I'm passionate about. Fashion doesn't have to exploit people or the planet." "And what about your personal life? There are rumors that a certain tech billionaire has his eye on you." Sienna's expression cooled. "You mean Beck Wilder? The man who sends gifts without ever having a conversation?" Lena leaned forward, sensing a headline. "So it's true, Beck Wilder has been pursuing you." "If you can call sending expensive presents pursuing," Sienna replied. "I've never even spoken to the man. And the gifts. I hear there was a car delivered." "To your apartment in Paris?" Sienna couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, a custom sports car, which I promptly returned." "Most women would jump at the attention from one of the world's most eligible bachelors," Lena pressed. Something in Sienna snapped. The carefully constructed public image slipped, and the real woman, the one raised by a grandmother who valued dignity above all else, emerged. "A man who leads with money is hiding a heart he doesn't know how to use," she said, looking directly into the camera. "I'm not interested in being bought. I've worked too hard to build my own life." The interview went viral within hours. Sienna shut down trended on social media, with women everywhere applauding her for standing up to the billionaire's superficial advances. In his penthouse office overlooking Central Park, Beck Wilder watched the interview on his tablet, his face flushing with embarrassment. At 32, he wasn't used to rejection. As the founder of Wilder Tech, he'd built an empire that made him one of the most powerful men in the country. "She really didn't hold back," commented his assistant David, who stood nervously by the door. Beck ran a hand through his sandy brown hair, his blue eyes narrowing. "She doesn't even know me." "To be fair, sir, you haven't actually introduced yourself," Just sent gifts. Beck stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below, the city bustled with people going about their lives, none of them judging him on national television. "I thought that's how you got a woman's attention," he said quietly. "My father always said grand gestures open doors." David had worked for Beck long enough to know that the mention of his father was rare. Harold Wilder had been old money, a man who believed everything and everyone had a price. "Maybe Ms. Monet is different," David suggested carefully. Beck turned, a strange look crossing his handsome face. "Yes, she is, isn't she?" 2 days later, Sienna was at a photo shoot in Brooklyn when Maya rushed in, looking flustered. "He's here," she whispered urgently. "Who's here?" Sienna asked, not looking up from the text she was sending to her grandmother. "Beck Wilder. He's outside. No entourage, no cameras. Just him." Sienna's head snapped up. "What does he want?" "He says he just wants 5 minutes of your time." The photographer was calling for Sienna to return to set, but curiosity got the better of her. "Tell him 3 minutes, and out back, where the paparazzi can't see." When Sienna stepped out the back door of the studio, she almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the polished tech mogul from magazine covers. This man wore jeans, a simple button-down shirt, and looked almost nervous. "Mr. Wilder," she said coolly, "this is a surprise." Beck looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the perfect features to the wariness in her eyes. "I deserved what you said in that interview." His directness caught her off guard. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you." "Yes, you were," he said with a slight smile, "and I needed the wake-up call." Sienna crossed her arms. "Did you come here for an apology? Because you won't get one." "No." Beck shook his head. "I came to apologize to you. You were right. I was hiding behind my money because it's easier than being real." For the first time, Sienna actually looked at him, not the billionaire, but the man. Without the expensive suit and the media hype, he was just a person, a rather handsome person with unexpectedly kind eyes. 3 minutes are up, Mr. Wilder," she said, but her tone had softened slightly. "Would you have dinner with me?" he asked, quickly. No gifts, no press, no strings, just two people having a conversation. Sienna hesitated. "Why should I?" "Because you intrigued me," he admitted. "No one has ever seen through me quite like you did." She studied him for a moment longer. "One dinner, a public place, and I'm not wearing anything fancy." Beck's genuine smile transformed his face. "How about tomorrow, 7 o'clock? There's a little Italian place in the village. Nothing flashy, just good food." Against her better judgment, Sienna nodded. "I'll meet you there." When she returned to the shoot, Maya was bursting with questions. "What did he want? What did you say?" "He asked me to dinner," Sienna replied, still a bit surprised at herself. "And I said yes." "The Ice Queen melts," Maya teased. "It's one dinner," Sienna corrected her, "and only because he showed up without all the billionaire trappings. That night," Sienna called her grandmother. Eloise Monet was now 75, living in the small house in Chicago where she had raised Sienna after her parents' car accident. "He came to see you himself?" Eloise asked, her voice warm through the phone. "Without all those fancy gifts?" "Yes, Grandma, it surprised me too." "And what did you think of him?" "The real him," Sienna sighed. "I don't know. He seemed different than I expected, more human." "Your grandfather wasn't rich when I met him," Eloise reminded her. "But he was real. That's what mattered." The next evening, Sienna deliberately dressed down. Black jeans, a simple white blouse, and minimal makeup. When she arrived at the restaurant, Beck was already there, sitting at a corner table away from the windows. "I was half expecting you to cancel," he admitted as she sat down. "I considered it," Sienna replied honestly. The waiter brought them menus, and Beck didn't order the most expensive wine or try to impress her with his knowledge of Italian cuisine. Instead, he asked her opinion and listened when she spoke. "So," Sienna said after they'd ordered, "why all the gifts? The car was especially over the top." Beck looked embarrassed. "I saw you at the Met Gala last year. You were wearing that silver dress that caught the light, and I couldn't take my eyes off you. But it wasn't just how you looked. It was how you carried yourself. Like you didn't need anyone's approval." "I don't," Sienna said simply. I know that now, Beck acknowledged, but I didn't know how to approach someone like you, someone real. I've spent my whole life in transactions, business deals, social climbing, relationships where everyone wants something. I thought that's how the world worked. For the first time, Sienna felt a flicker of understanding. It's easy to forget there's another way when you're surrounded by people who play those games. Tell me about you, Beck said. Not the model, the person. Sienna hesitated, then found herself talking about her grandmother, about growing up watching Eloise sew dresses for wealthy women while teaching Sienna that dignity couldn't be purchased. Beck really listened, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested. And when he talked about building his company, Sienna glimpsed the dedication behind the success, the long hours, the risks, the vision. You're not what I expected, Sienna admitted as they shared tiramisu. Neither are you, Beck replied. You're even more impressive up close. The evening ended with Beck walking her to her car, making no attempt to extend the night or press for another date. Thank you for giving me a chance, he said simply. This doesn't mean I'm going to date you, Sienna warned him. Beck smiled. I don't, but I'd like the opportunity to change your mind. Over the next few weeks, Beck continued to surprise her. Instead of lavish gifts, he sent thoughtful messages. When he learned she was working with a literacy program in Harlem, he asked if he could volunteer too. Sienna watched him sit on the floor with children, reading stories and listening to them with the same attention he gave to business partners. No cameras, no publicity, just genuine involvement. Why are you doing this? She asked him one afternoon as they walked through Central Park after the reading program. Because it matters to you, he said, and because I'm learning there's more to life than what I've been chasing. Something was changing between them, a slow electric dance of discovery. Beck challenged her assumptions about wealthy men, and she challenged his ideas about what really mattered. When her grandmother came to visit New York, Sienna reluctantly agreed to let Beck meet her. To her surprise, Eloise and Beck spent hours talking about everything from politics to Eloise's sewing techniques. He listens, Eloise told Sienna later. That's rare in a man with so much power. I still don't trust it, Sienna admitted. His world is so different from ours. Maybe, her grandmother said wisely, but people can surprise you if you give them room to be more than your first impression. As spring turned to summer, Sienna found herself looking forward to Beck's calls, to their walks and conversations. He never pushed, never assumed, always asked. And somewhere along the way, his smile began to make her heart beat faster. But whenever he tried to move closer, to hint at deeper feelings, Sienna pulled back. What are you afraid of? He asked her one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the Hudson River. Disappointment, she answered honestly. Your world is built on image and money. What happens when the novelty of dating someone who doesn't care about those things wears off? Beck reached for her hand, and for once, she didn't pull away. I'm falling for you, Sienna. Not for your beauty or your fame, though you are incredibly beautiful, but for your mind, your heart, your strength. Sienna looked into his eyes and saw something that frightened her with its intensity, because she was feeling it too, that pull, that connection that went beyond the surface. When everything's gone, when you're not headlines or Forbes lists, if you still want me, then maybe I'll believe you, she said softly. Beck squeezed her hand. Some things you have to take on faith, but Sienna had learned early that faith was a luxury. I believe in what I can see, what stands the test of time. Neither of them knew then how soon that test would come. The next morning, Beck was in the middle of a board meeting when his CFO, Richard Vance, entered the room looking ashen. We've been hacked, Richard announced, and there's something you need to see immediately. Beck excused himself and followed Richard to his office, where the financial officer pulled up an email that had been sent to every major news outlet in the country. Someone got access to the company servers, Richard explained. They've leaked everything, internal communications, financial records, user data, and this. He pointed to a series of emails between Beck and an investor group from 3 years earlier, emails that suggested Beck had knowingly misrepresented the capabilities of Wilder Tech's security software to close a crucial funding round. This is taken out of context, Beck said, his stomach sinking. We were still developing those features and they were implemented 6 months later. The market doesn't care about context, Richard replied grimly. Our stock is already down 30%, and the trading day just started. By noon, Beck's phone was ringing non-stop with calls from investors, board members, and journalists. The scandal was spreading like wildfire, with headlines questioning not just his business ethics, but the security of the entire Wilder tech platform. In an emergency board meeting that afternoon, voices were raised and accusations flew. Richard, Vance suggested a temporary step-down might help calm the markets. Just until we sort this out, he urged, to show we're taking it seriously. Beck looked around the table at the board members, people he'd thought were allies, and saw the calculations in their eyes. They were already distancing themselves, protecting their own interests. You want me to fall on my sword, Beck said. Flatly. It's just temporary, Richard assured him, not quite meeting his eyes. By the end of the day, Beck had agreed to a leave of absence while an independent investigation was conducted. The news hit the evening broadcasts, and Wilder Tech's stock plummeted further. Sitting alone in his penthouse that night, Beck tried repeatedly to reach Sienna. Her photo shoot in Milan meant they were on different time zones, and all he got was her voicemail. Sienna, it's me, he said after the beep. There's a situation with the company, it's bad and it's going to get worse. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Call me when you can. What Beck didn't know was that while he was leaving that message, Richard Vance was meeting secretly with Michael Harding, the CEO of rival tech firm Harding Solutions, the same man who had orchestrated the hack and leak. It's done, Richard told Michael in a private dining room at an exclusive club. The board has sidelined him. Now we just need to make sure the investigation finds what we want it to find. Michael smiled coldly. By the time we're finished, Beck Wilder won't have a company to return to. And you, my friend, will be the new CEO of what's left. As day broke over New York, Beck Wilder faced the first day of a battle that would strip him of everything he'd built. Everything except what truly mattered. Sienna Monet stepped off the plane from Milan, her phone buzzing with notifications as soon as she turned it on. 27 missed calls, most from Maya, and dozens of text messages. Something was wrong. She called Maya immediately. Thank goodness you called, Maya answered, sounding relieved. Have you seen the news? No. What's happened? Sienna asked, moving through the terminal with her carry-on bag. It's Beck. His company is in trouble, big trouble. There's been a hack, leaked emails, accusations of fraud. It's all over every news channel. Sienna stopped walking. Is he okay? I don't know. He's called you several times. The board forced him to step down temporarily while they investigate. As her car service drove her from the airport, Sienna scrolled through news articles. The headlines were brutal. Wilder tech stock in free fall after fraud allegations. Beck Wilder, tech genius. Or sophisticated fraudster. Investors flee as Wilder tech scandal deepens. Sienna listened to Beck's voicemail. He sounded tired, worried, but determined. She called him back immediately. Sienna, he answered, his voice filled with relief. You got my messages. I just landed. Beck, what's happening? It's bad, he admitted. Someone hacked our servers and leaked selected emails that make it look like I misled investors years ago. The context is missing, but the damage is done. The board has asked me to step down while they investigate. Do you know who's behind it? Not yet, but I have suspicions. My CFO, Richard, has been pushing hard for my removal, a little too hard. Sienna could hear the strain in his voice. What can I do? There was a pause. Just don't believe everything you read. I know how this looks, but it's not what happened. I want to see you, Sienna said firmly. Tonight. Your place. Better not. Beck replied. There are reporters camped outside my building. Let me come to you. That evening, Sienna waited in her Manhattan apartment, watching the news coverage grow increasingly negative. By the time Beck arrived wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, as a poor disguise, Wilder Tech stock had lost nearly half its value. Beck looked different, his confident posture replaced with tension, dark circles under his eyes. But when he saw Sienna, genuine relief washed over his face. Thank you for seeing me, he said as she closed the door behind him. Most people aren't taking my calls today. Sienna led him to the living room. Her apartment was spacious but modest, by celebrity standards, filled with books and mementos from her travels rather than expensive art or designer furniture. "Tell me everything," she said, sitting beside him on the couch. Beck explained how the leaked emails were from early in the company's development when they were racing to secure funding for their security software. "We promised features that were still in development," he admitted, "but we delivered them all within 6 months ahead of schedule. No investor lost money. In fact, they all made fortunes when we went public." "Then why is this such a big deal?" "Because it's not about those emails," Beck said grimly. "This is a takeover attempt. Someone wants to destroy my reputation and buy up Wilder Tech cheap." Over the next few days, the situation worsened. Additional leaks suggested data breaches affecting millions of users, causing government regulators to announce an investigation. Major clients began suspending their contracts with Wilder Tech, and the stock continued to plummet. Beck worked tirelessly, operating from his apartment rather than the office, trying to trace the source of the leaks and contain the damage. Sienna found herself calling him daily, bringing food when he forgot to eat, becoming an unexpected source of support. "You don't have to do this," Beck told her one evening as she arrived with grocery bags. "This isn't what you signed up for." Sienna looked at him steadily. "I'm not doing this because I have to, I'm doing it because I want to." "Why?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. "Because I see you fighting for the truth," she replied simply. "And because I've been judged unfairly too. People think models are just pretty faces with nothing inside. I know what it's like when no one looks past the surface." A week after the scandal broke, Beck received a call from his attorney. "The board has voted," the lawyer told him grimly. "They're making your temporary removal permanent. Richard Vance has been named interim CEO." Beck sat down heavily, the phone still pressed to his ear. "They can't do this. I'm the majority shareholder." "Not anymore," the lawyer replied. "Your shares have been frozen pending the fraud investigation, and there's more. They're suing you personally for breach of fiduciary duty." After the call, Beck stared out the window of his penthouse, looking at the empire he'd built, an empire that was slipping through his fingers. His phone rang again. It was David, his assistant. "Sir, I hate to add to your troubles, but there's an issue with your accounts. All your credit cards have been declined, and the bank is asking about suspicious activity." "What? That's impossible." "And sir, there are people from the building management here. They say the penthouse ownership is under review due to the asset freeze, and they're asking about alternative arrangements." Beck felt the walls closing in. Within days, he'd gone from one of the most powerful men in the country to someone who couldn't even pay his bills. That night, Beck called his friend Jake, the one person besides Sienna who hadn't abandoned him. "You can stay at my loft in Brooklyn," Jake offered. "It's not the penthouse, but it's got a decent guest room, and no reporters." "Thanks, Jake. I might need to take you up on that sooner than I thought." Sienna was at a photo shoot when Maya rushed in with the latest news. Beck's being evicted from his apartment, she told Sienna in a hushed voice. "And all his accounts have been frozen. It's like someone is systematically destroying him." Sienna felt a chill. "Where is he going?" "No one knows. He's disappeared. The press is having a field day with it. They're saying he's fled the country." That evening, Sienna tried repeatedly to reach Beck. All her calls went straight to voicemail. Worried, she contacted everyone they knew in common, finally getting Jake's number from a mutual acquaintance. "He's here," Jake confirmed when she called, "but he's not in great shape." The board issued a statement today formally cutting all ties with him and announcing a major restructuring of the company. "Give me the address," Sienna said. "I'm coming over." Jake's loft was in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, worlds away from Beck's glossy Manhattan penthouse. When Jake opened the door, Sienna stood there in jeans and an old hoodie, a grocery bag in hand. "He's in the guest room," Jake told her quietly. "He hasn't come out much today." Sienna found Beck sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his laptop. He looked up when she entered, surprise and something else, shame, crossing his face. "Sienna, how did you find me?" "I have my ways," she said, setting down the bag. "I brought food, real food, not takeout." Beck closed the laptop. "You shouldn't be here. The press would have a field day. Supermodel visits disgraced tech CEO. I don't care about the press, Sienna replied, sitting beside him. I care about you. For the first time since she'd known him, Beck's carefully controlled facade crumbled. I've lost everything. The company, my reputation, my home. They've frozen all my accounts. I can't even access my own money. Sienna took his hand. Tell me what happened. Beck explained how Richard Vance had orchestrated the entire scandal, working with Michael Harding from Harding Solutions. They planted those emails, selective pieces taken out of context, and now Harding is positioning to buy controlling interest in Wilder Tech at pennies on the dollar. Can't you fight back? You must have evidence. I'm trying, but they were careful. And with my assets frozen, I can't even afford to pay my legal team. He looked at her, his eyes hollow. You know what's ironic? All those years chasing success, thinking it made me who I was. And in 1 week, it's gone. And so are most of the people I thought cared about me. Not everyone, Sienna said softly. That night, Sienna cooked dinner in Jake's small kitchen, a simple pasta dish her grandmother had taught her. The three of them ate together, and for brief moments, Beck almost forgot the disaster unfolding around him. You know, Jake said as they finished eating, this might sound strange, but there's something freeing about hitting rock bottom. You find out who your real friends are. Beck looked at Sienna, who was clearing the plates. Yes, you do. So over the next few weeks, a new routine developed. Beck worked with the few allies he had left, gathering evidence of the conspiracy against him. Sienna balanced her modeling commitments with spending time at Jake's loft, often cooking meals or simply sitting with Beck as he worked. You don't have to keep coming here, Beck told her one evening as they walked through the neighborhood. It was the first time he'd ventured out in days. Do you want me to stop? Sienna asked. Beck shook his head. No. These moments with you are the only things keeping me sane. Sienna linked her arm through his. Then stop questioning it. Slowly, Beck began to change. Without the trappings of wealth and power, a different man emerged. More vulnerable, more authentic, more present. He helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries up the stairs. He fixed Jake's temperamental coffee maker. Small things, human things, that the billionaire Beck Wilder would never have had time for. One evening, Sienna arrived to find Beck cooking. You cook? She asked, surprised. I used to, in college, he admitted. Before personal chefs and business dinners took over my life. It's not fancy, but it's edible. Sienna watched him move around the kitchen with newfound humility. You know, you're different now. Broke, you mean? He said with a wry smile. Real, she corrected him. The man behind all the money and power. I like him better. As they ate the simple meal he'd prepared, Beck studied her face. Why are you really here, Sienna? Your life is red carpets and magazine covers. This, he gestured around the modest loft. This isn't your world. You'd be surprised, Sienna replied. I grew up in a small house in Chicago with my grandmother. We never had much money. This feels more like home than most of the places I've been photographed. Later, as they washed dishes side by side, another first, Beck asked about her childhood. After my parents died, it was just Grandma Eloise and me, Sienna told him. She worked as a seamstress for wealthy women in the city. Sometimes she'd bring me along to fittings. I'd sit in the corner watching these women with their diamonds and designer bags. Is that when you decided to become a model? Sienna shook her head. No, that came later. But it was when I learned an important lesson. Those women with all their money and status, some were kind, but others treated my grandmother like she was invisible. That's when I decided that if I ever had success, I would never let it change. How I treated people. Beck was quiet for a moment. I was probably one of those people before. Success made me believe I was special, that ordinary rules didn't apply to me. And now? He looked at his hands, rough from work he'd never done before. Now I know better. Days turned into weeks. Beck sold his few remaining assets, a vintage car collection, some artwork, to fund his legal battle against Richard and Michael. The media coverage began to shift as evidence emerged of suspicious trading patterns around Wilder Tech stock. Sienna's career continued to flourish. She was offered the cover of Time magazine's Icons issue, a rare honor for a model. The night before the photo shoot, she came to the loft to find Beck looking better than he had in weeks. "I got some good news today," he told her excitedly. "My attorney found evidence that Richard was selling company secrets to Harding Solutions. Months before the hack, a whistleblower from inside Wilder Tech has come forward." "Beck, that's wonderful." Sienna hugged him impulsively. When she pulled back, their faces were inches apart. For a moment, they both froze, caught in each other's gaze. Then, slowly, Beck leaned forward and kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a hunger that surprised them both. When they finally broke apart, Sienna's heart was racing. "I've wanted to do that for a long time," Beck admitted, his voice rough. "Why didn't you?" "I wasn't worthy of you," he said simply. "Maybe I'm still not." Sienna touched his face. "You don't get to decide that, I do." That night changed everything between them. As Sienna lay in Beck's arms in the small guest bed, she felt a peace she'd never known before. No cameras, no pretense, just two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. "I'm falling in love with you," Beck whispered into her hair. "Not the model, not the face on the magazines. You, the woman who shows up when the world falls apart." Sienna felt tears sting her eyes. For years, she'd built walls to protect herself from men who only wanted her beauty, her fame, her body. Now those walls were crumbling, and it terrified. "Hurt. I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of this. Of us. Of what happens when your life goes back to normal." Beck propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "What if it doesn't? What if this is the new normal? A man who lost everything but found something more valuable?" The next morning, Sienna left early for her Time magazine shoot. Beck walked her to the door, kissing her goodbye as if they'd been together for years. "Knock them dead," he told her. "And Sienna, thank you for seeing me, the real me." The Time photo shoot was going smoothly until the interviewer, a respected journalist named Helen Carter, asked about Beck. "There are rumors you've been seen visiting the Brooklyn apartment where Beck Wilder is staying," Helen said. "Care to comment on your relationship with the disgraced CEO?" Sienna took a deep breath. "Beck Wilder is not disgraced. He's a man fighting to clear his name against people who tried to destroy him for profit." Helen raised an eyebrow. "So you are involved with him?" "I'm involved with the truth," Sienna replied carefully. "And the truth is that Beck Wilder is more of a man now, without all the trappings of wealth, than most of the billionaires I've met." The interview made headlines, with Sienna's defense of Beck featured prominently. By the time she returned to the loft that evening, Beck had seen it. "You didn't have to do that," he said, pulling her into his arms. "It could hurt your career to be associated with me right now." "I don't care," Sienna replied. "Some things matter more than image." That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Beck told her about his childhood. Growing up with a father who measured love in achievements, a mother who drank to cope with the emptiness of their privileged life. "I always thought success would make me happy," he said. "But it just made me more like my father, always chasing the next deal, the next milestone." "And now?" Sienna asked, tracing patterns on his chest. "Now I know what actually matters," Beck said, pulling her closer, "and it has nothing to do with money or power." The next morning, Beck received a call from his attorney that would change everything once again. Evidence had emerged that not only cleared Beck's name, but implicated Richard Vance and Michael Harding in corporate espionage and stock manipulation. "The SEC is involved now," the attorney told him. "They're moving to unfreeze your assets and looking into charges against Vance and Harding." When Beck shared the news with Sienna, her reaction surprised him. "That's wonderful, Beck," she said, but her eyes held a shadow of worry. "What's wrong? I thought you'd be happier." Sienna looked away. "I am happy for you. You deserve to clear your name and get justice." Beck gently turned her face back to his. But I wonder what happens now. When you get your company back, your penthouse, your old life, where do I fit in that world?" Beck took her hands in his. "Sienna, don't you understand yet? I don't want that old life back, not the way it was. These weeks with you have shown me what really matters. If I get Wilder Tech back, it will be different. I will be different." Sienna wanted to believe him. But part of her, the part raised by a grandmother who had seen the wealthy come and go, their promises as changeable as the seasons, held back. "I guess we'll see," she said softly. Neither of them knew that the true test of their love was yet to come, as Beck's world began to right itself and Sienna faced a choice that would define not just their relationship, but who she truly was. The headlines changed overnight. Wilder Tech conspiracy uncovered. CEO Beck Wilder framed. Former CFO Richard Vance under investigation for corporate sabotage. SEC launches probe into Harding Solutions for market manipulation. Beck sat at Jake's kitchen table, scrolling through the news on his laptop. After weeks of fighting, the truth was finally coming out. The SEC had issued emergency orders to unfreeze his personal accounts, and his attorneys were working to restore his position at Wilder Tech. "How does it feel to be vindicated?" Jake asked, pouring coffee for them both. Beck looked up, a small smile on his face. "Good, but different than I expected." "Different how?" "Before all this happened, I would have been focused on revenge, making Richard and Michael pay for what they did. Now I just want to rebuild and move forward." Jake studied his friend. "You've changed." "I had to," Beck replied simply. Later that day, Beck received a call from the board chairman of Wilder Tech. "The board would like to meet with you tomorrow," the chairman said. "In light of recent developments, we're prepared to discuss your reinstatement as CEO." "I'll be there," Beck said, "but I have some conditions of my own." When he ended the call, he turned to find Sienna watching him from the doorway. She had just returned from a photo shoot, still wearing the elegant dress from the campaign. "Good news?" she asked. "The board wants me back," Beck told her. "There's a meeting tomorrow." Sienna nodded, her expression unreadable. "That's great. I knew they would see the truth eventually." Beck crossed the room and took her hands. "Come with me to the meeting." Sienna's eyes widened. "What? Why?" "Because I want them to see who stood by me when they all ran," Beck said. "And because I need you there." The next morning, Beck wore a borrowed suit from Jake that was slightly too large for his frame. The sleek, custom-tailored CEO was gone, replaced by a man who looked more human, more approachable. Sienna wore a simple black dress, professional but understated. As they rode the elevator up to the Wilder Tech offices, Beck squeezed her hand. "Nervous?" she asked. "Not about the meeting," he replied. "About what comes after." The boardroom fell silent when Beck entered with Sienna. The same board members who had voted to remove him now stood awkwardly, unsure how to greet the man they had abandoned. "Mr. Wilder," the chairman began, "we're pleased you could join us today. In light of the evidence clearing you of any wrongdoing, the board would like to formally apologize and request your return as Chief Executive Officer." Beck remained standing, his hand still holding Sienna's. "Before I accept, I want to be clear about a few things. First, there will be a complete audit of the company, everything that happened while I was gone. Second, I want a new board member who specializes in ethical business practices." The chairman nodded. "Those are reasonable requests." "And third," Beck continued, "I'll be restructuring the company to prioritize our responsibilities to users and employees over short-term profits." This caused a stir among the board members. "Mr. Wilder," one of them said, "while we understand your position, we have shareholders to consider." "Yes, we do," Beck agreed, "and they deserve a company that builds lasting value, not just quarterly returns. I lost everything because this company became about money instead of mission. That changes now." The meeting lasted for hours. By the end, Beck had secured his return as CEO with most of his conditions accepted. As they left the building, reporters were waiting outside. "Mr. Wilder, how does it feel to be vindicated? Will you be pursuing legal action against Richard Vance?" "Ms. Monet, are you and Beck Wilder in a relationship?" Beck stepped forward, his arm around Sienna's waist. "I'm grateful that the truth has come to light. Wilder Tech has always been about creating technology that improves people's lives, and that mission continues. As for my personal life," he looked at Sienna, who gave him a small nod. "Yes, Ms. Monet and I are together. She saw value in me when I had nothing, which makes her the most valuable person in my life." The statement made headlines around the world. The fallen tech mogul and the supermodel who stood by him became an overnight sensation, a modern fairy tale with a twist. In the days that followed, Beck's life began to return to normal. His assets were unfrozen. The penthouse was returned to his ownership. Offers poured in for interviews and book deals about his experience, but something had changed. Instead of moving back to his penthouse immediately, Beck stayed at Jake's loft. When he did return to his former home, he took Sienna with him. "It feels strange being back here," he said, as they stood in the massive living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Like it belongs to someone else." Sienna walked around the space, taking in the expensive furniture, the original artwork, the trappings of extreme wealth. "It's beautiful," she said, "but it doesn't feel like you anymore." Beck came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "No, it doesn't. I was thinking of selling it." Sienna turned to face him. "Really? But you love this place." "I loved what it represented," Beck corrected her. "Success, status, power. But it's just a space. It never felt like home the way Jake's loft did these past weeks." The following day, Beck returned to Wilder Tech headquarters for his first full day back as CEO. The office had been cleaned out of any trace of Richard Vance, and employees lined up to welcome Beck back. David, his loyal assistant, had tears in his eyes. "It's good to have you back, sir." "It's good to be back," Beck replied. "And David, it's just Beck now, no more sir." The company had suffered during the scandal. Stock prices remained low, major clients were still hesitant to return, and employee morale had been damaged. Beck gathered the entire staff for a town hall meeting. "Many of you stood by this company during its darkest days," he told them. "Others weren't sure what to believe. That's understandable. But today, we start fresh." Wilder Tech was never about one person. Not me, not Richard Vance. It's about all of us creating something meaningful together. He outlined his vision for the company's future. More transparent, more ethical, more focused on positive impact than profit margins. By the end of the day, something had shifted. There was energy in the office again, a sense of renewed purpose. When Beck returned to the penthouse that evening, he found Sienna cooking in his rarely used kitchen. "I hope you don't mind," she said, stirring something that smelled delicious. "I thought you might be tired after your first day back." Beck kissed her, overwhelmed by the simple act of care. "I don't mind at all. It makes this place feel more like a home." As they ate dinner, Beck talked about his day, the challenges ahead, the changes he wanted to make, the people who had surprised him with their loyalty. "You seem different," Sienna observed. "More excited about the work itself, not just the success." "I am," Beck admitted. "Before, it was all about growth and domination. Now I'm thinking about impact, how our technology affects people's lives, how the company treats employees, what legacy we're creating." Later that night, as they lay in bed, Sienna asked the question that had been on her mind. "Are you moving back here permanently?" Beck was quiet for a moment. "I'm not sure. It never felt right before, living in all this space alone. But with you here..." He trailed off, then looked at her intently. "Would you consider moving in?" Sienna sat up, surprised. "Beck, we've only been together for a few months, and most of that time was during a crisis. I know it seems fast," he acknowledged, "but these months have been more real than years of dating the usual way. I know what matters to me now, Sienna, and it's you." Sienna touched his face gently. "Let's give it a little time. Make sure this is real and not just a reaction to everything that's happened." Beck nodded, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. "Whatever you need, I'm not going anywhere." The next few weeks brought new challenges. Beck worked long hours rebuilding Wilder Tech, while Sienna's career continued to soar. She was offered a major cosmetics contract and invited to host a documentary series about sustainable fashion. Their time together became precious, stolen moments between their demanding schedules. When Beck was invited to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco, he asked Sienna to join him. "It's just 3 days," he said. "We could use a break from New York." Sienna agreed, and they flew to California on a commercial flight, Beck's choice rather than the private jet he once would have automatically chartered. The conference was Beck's first major public appearance since the scandal. The hall was packed. As he took the stage, hundreds of tech professionals eager to hear from the CEO who had lost everything and fought his way back. "6 months ago, I thought success meant stock prices, market dominance, and my face on magazine covers," Beck began. Then I lost it all. My company, my reputation, my home. And in losing everything, I found what actually matters. From the side of the stage, Sienna watched as Beck spoke with a vulnerability and authenticity she had never seen in his public persona before. The tech industry talks about disruption like it's always positive, he continued, but we rarely talk about the human cost of that disruption, or the moral responsibilities that come with creating technology that shapes people's lives. The audience was captivated. This wasn't the slick, confident Beck Wilder they had expected. This was a man transformed by adversity, speaking hard truths about their industry. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. As reporters crowded around him afterward, Beck politely answered a few questions before excusing himself. "There's someone I need to see," he told them, making his way to Sienna. As they walked through the hotel lobby, a woman approached them, elegant, in her 60s, with a shrewd expression that reminded Sienna of a hawk. "Beck," the woman said coolly, "quite the comeback story." Beck stiffened slightly. "Mother, I didn't know you were here." "I wasn't planning to be," she replied, "but when I heard my son was speaking, after everything that happened..." She turned her attention to Sienna, assessing her with calculating eyes. "And this must be the model, the one who stood by you when you had nothing." "Sienna Monet," Sienna introduced herself, extending her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Wilder." "Victoria, please," the woman replied, her handshake brief and formal. "Beck, darling, we should have dinner while you're in town. Your father would have joined us, but he's in Tokyo on business." "Of course he is," Beck murmured. Then, more. "Clearly, dinner would be fine. Tomorrow night? Perfect. The Cypress Club at 8. Bring your friend if you'd like." With that, Victoria Wilder swept away, leaving a chill in her wake. "I'm sorry about that," Beck said once his mother was out of earshot. "My parents aren't exactly warm people. I've dealt with worse," Sienna assured him. "But she doesn't seem thrilled about me." "It's not you," Beck explained as they walked toward the elevators. "It's that you're not who they would have chosen. My parents have always had very specific ideas about suitable partners, preferably from old money with the right connections." The next evening, dinner with Victoria Wilder was exactly as uncomfortable as Sienna had anticipated. The restaurant was exclusive and formal, with prices that made Sienna think of her grandmother's monthly rent. "So, Miss Monet," Victoria said after they had ordered, "Beck tells me you grew up in Chicago?" "Yes, with my grandmother after my parents passed away." "How unfortunate," Victoria murmured. "And your grandmother was in fashion as well?" "She was a seamstress," Sienna replied, lifting her chin slightly. "She made dresses for wealthy women." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "How charming. From seamstress's granddaughter to the cover of Vogue. America truly is the land of opportunity." Beck set down his wineglass a bit too forcefully. "Mother, Sienna is one of the most successful models in the world. Her family background is not relevant." "Of course it is, darling," Victoria replied smoothly. "Family is always relevant. It shapes who we are." She turned back to Sienna. "I'm simply curious about the woman who has captured my son's attention so thoroughly." The evening continued in this vein, with Victoria asking pointed questions about Sienna's education, her future plans, whether she intended to continue modeling at her age. By the time dessert arrived, Beck was seething, and Sienna was maintaining her composure through sheer willpower. "Beck mentioned you might be selling the New York penthouse," Victoria said, changing tactics. "That seems hasty. It's a prime piece of real estate." "I'm considering it," Beck replied. "It doesn't feel like home anymore." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what does feel like home now? Some artist's loft in Brooklyn?" Beck reached for Sienna's hand under the table. "Home isn't about the address or the square footage, Mother. It's about who you share it with." Later, back in their hotel room, Beck apologized repeatedly. "I should have known she would be like that," he said, pacing. "My mother has always been more concerned with appearances than happiness." Sienna sat on the edge of the bed, removing her earrings. "Beck, it's okay. I've dealt with people like your mother my entire career. Women who look at me and see only my skin color or my background, never my accomplishments." Beck stopped pacing and knelt in front of her. "You were amazing tonight," Dignified, graceful, everything she isn't. Sienna smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. This is just the beginning, you know. If we stay together, there will be more dinners like that. More people questioning why you're with me. Let them question, Beck said fiercely. I know why I'm with you. Because you're real. Because you saw me when I had nothing to offer but myself. Because I love you. It was the first time he had said it so directly. Sienna's breath caught in her throat. Beck, you don't have to say it back, he said quickly. I know it's still complicated for you, but I needed you to hear it. I love you, Sienna Monet. Not for your beauty or your fame, but for your heart. Sienna pulled him up to sit beside her on the bed. It's not that I don't feel it too, she said softly. It's that I'm scared of believing in this, in us, and then watching it fall apart, when real life takes over again. Beck's face grew serious. What do you mean by real life? This, Sienna gestured around them. The conferences, the media attention, the business empire. You're back in your world now, and it's a world where relationships like ours don't usually last. Is that what you think? Beck asked, hurt evident in his voice. That now that I have Bunny again, I'll go back to being the person I was before. Not intentionally, Sienna said. But this world changes people, Beck. I've seen it happen. The pressure, the expectations, the constant scrutiny. Beck stood up, running a hand through his hair in frustration. So what are you saying? That we're doomed because I'm successful again? That we only worked when I was at my lowest? No, Sienna said, standing to face him. I'm saying I'm scared. I'm saying I need to know that what we found during those weeks in Brooklyn wasn't just a beautiful moment in time, but something that can survive in the real world. Beck took her hands, his eyes intense. Then let me prove it to you. Every day, every decision, every choice I make, let me show you that I'm still the man you came to care for in Brooklyn, not the man who sent diamond bracelets to impress you. Sienna wanted desperately to believe him, but as they returned to New York the next day, to their separate lives and demanding careers, a small voice inside her wondered if what they had found together could truly withstand the pressures now surrounding them. Little did she know that the ultimate test of their love was about to arrive in a form neither of them expected. 2 months after their return from San Francisco, Beck and Sienna settled into a new rhythm. Beck had transformed. Wilder Tech, with a focus on ethical practices and user privacy, slowly rebuilding its reputation. Sienna's career continued to flourish, with offers coming in for major campaigns and speaking engagements about diversity in fashion. They split their time between Beck's penthouse and Sienna's apartment, neither quite ready to make a permanent change. Though their relationship had deepened, Sienna still kept a small part of herself guarded. One evening, as they walked through Central Park, Beck noticed Sienna was quieter than usual. "What's on your mind?" he asked, squeezing her hand. Sienna hesitated. "I got an offer today for a year-long contract with Estelle Cosmetics. It would mean being the global face of their new line." "That's amazing," Beck said genuinely. "They're one of the biggest beauty companies in the world." "Yes," Sienna agreed, "but it would mean a lot of travel. Months at a time in Paris, Tokyo, London." Beck was quiet for a moment. "I see. I haven't given them an answer yet," Sienna added quickly. "What's holding you back?" Beck asked. "It sounds like an incredible opportunity." Sienna stopped walking and turned to face him. "Us, this, whatever we're building together." Beck touched her face gently. "Sienna, I would never ask you to choose between your career and me. That's not love." "I know that," she said, "but long-distance relationships are hard, and we're still figuring out what we are to each other." "I know exactly what you are to me," Beck said firmly. "You're the woman I love, the woman who saw me at my worst and still found something worth caring about." Sienna's eyes searched his. "And if I take this contract? If I'm gone for months at a time?" "Then we'll make it work," Beck said simply. "We'll visit each other, we'll talk every day. Your success is part of who you are, Sienna. I would never ask you to be less than everything you can be." That night, as they lay in bed in Sienna's apartment, she made her decision. "I'm going to accept the Estelle contract," she told Beck. "It starts next month." Beck pulled her closer. "I'm proud of you, and we'll figure out the rest as we go." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. Sienna had meetings with Estelle's creative team, wardrobe fittings, and preliminary photo shoots. Beck threw himself into a new project at Wilder, Tech, a privacy platform that would give users more control over their personal data. As Sienna's departure date approached, Beck surprised her with a key to his penthouse. "I want you to know you always have a home here," he said, "whether I'm here or not." Sienna was touched by the gesture, but something still held her back from fully committing. The night before she was due to leave for Paris, she visited her grandmother in Chicago. Eloise Monet, now approaching her late 70s, was as sharp and insightful as ever. She listened as Sienna talked about Beck, about her fears, about the upcoming year of travel. "You're still afraid he'll change back into the man he was before," Eloise observed astutely. Sienna nodded. "When he had nothing, it was easy to see the real person, but now he has everything again. The money, the power, the status." "And has he changed since getting those things back?" Eloise asked. "No," Sienna admitted. "He's still the same man I fell for in Brooklyn. But what if it's just a matter of time?" Eloise took her granddaughter's hands. "Child, there comes a point where holding back isn't caution, it's fear. And fear will rob you of the very happiness you're trying to protect." The next day, Beck drove Sienna to the airport. As they stood at the security checkpoint, Sienna felt a sudden panic at the thought of leaving him. "It's only 3 months until you can visit," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Beck smiled, though his eyes were sad. "I've already booked my ticket. And Sienna, take all the time you need, not just for the job, but to be sure about us. I'll be here when you get back." Sienna hugged him tightly, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his arms around her. "I'll call you when I land." As her plane took off, Sienna looked out the window at New York disappearing beneath the clouds. She was leaving behind not just Beck, but all the questions and doubts she still carried about their future. Paris welcomed Sienna with its familiar beauty and energy. The Estelle team had arranged a stunning apartment near the Champs-Élysées, and her schedule was immediately packed with meetings, photo shoots, and press events. Beck called her every day, no matter the time difference. He sent no extravagant gifts, no grand gestures, just his time, his thoughts, his unwavering support. "The board meeting went well," he told her during one late-night call. "We're implementing the new privacy features next quarter." "That's wonderful," Sienna said, curled up in her bed, the Parisian night quiet outside her window. "How's Jake?" "Good. He's dating someone new, a kindergarten teacher, and he asks about you all the time." These conversations became her anchor, a daily reminder of what she had left behind and what was waiting for her. A month into her stay in Paris, Sienna received an unexpected visitor. She returned from a photo shoot to find Victoria Wilder sitting in the lobby of her apartment building. "Mrs. Wilder," Sienna said, surprised, "what are you doing in Paris?" "I have business here," Victoria replied coolly, "and I thought we might have a chat without my son present." Against her better judgment, Sienna invited Victoria up to her apartment. As they sat in the elegant living room, Victoria came straight to the point. "Beck is not himself since meeting you," she said bluntly. "He's making decisions that concern me, turning down acquisitions that would be highly profitable, implementing costly privacy features that eat into margins, talking about selling properties he's owned for years." Sienna kept her expression neutral. "Those sound like business decisions, not personal ones." "They're connected," Victoria insisted. "Before you, Beck understood what was important: growth, market share, wealth building. Now he's distracted by idealism." "I think you mean ethics," Sienna replied evenly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Call it what you will. The point is, his priorities have shifted. And while you may find his new sensitivity charming, it's not what built Wilder Tech into a billion-dollar company." "Why are you telling me this?" Sienna asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because you have influence over my son, and because I think you care about him enough to want what's best for his future." Sienna stood up, her patience gone. "What's best for Beck is for him to be the man he wants to be, not the man you or his father tried to shape him into. And that man, the real Beck, is someone I deeply admire and care for." Victoria rose as well, gathering her designer handbag. "I see I've wasted my time, but consider this, Ms. Monet. People like us and people like you come from different worlds for a reason. Those worlds don't mix well, no matter how pretty the story seems at first." After Victoria left, Sienna called Beck, her hands still shaking with anger. "Your mother paid me a visit," she told him. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "What did she want?" "To warn me that I'm ruining you by making you too ethical," Sienna said with a bitter laugh. "I'm so sorry," Beck said, his voice tight with anger. "This is completely unacceptable. I'll talk to her." "It's not your fault," Sienna assured him. "But Beck, is she right? Are you making business decisions that could hurt Wilder Tech because of things we've talked about?" "I'm making decisions based on what I believe is right," Beck replied firmly. "And yes, some of those values became clearer to me because of you, because of what I experienced when I lost everything. But they're my decisions, Sienna, and they're making Wilder Tech a better company, not a weaker one." The incident with Victoria lingered in Sienna's mind over the following weeks. Not because she believed Victoria's warnings, but because it forced her to confront how deeply entwined her life had become with Beck's. 2 months into her Paris assignment, Sienna received devastating news. Eloise had suffered a severe stroke and was hospitalized in Chicago. Sienna immediately arranged to fly home, calling Beck from the taxi to the airport. "I'll meet you in Chicago," he said without hesitation. "Just tell me which hospital." When Sienna arrived at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, exhausted from the transatlantic flight and sick with worry, Beck was already there. He had been sitting with Eloise for hours, holding her hand and talking to her softly even though she remained unconscious. "The doctors say it was a major stroke," he told Sienna as he held her in the hospital corridor. "But she's stable. She's fighting." For the next week, Sienna barely left the hospital. Beck handled everything else, arranging for her temporary leave from Estelle, making sure the house was taken care of, coordinating with doctors and insurance companies. One night, as Sienna dozed in the uncomfortable chair beside her grandmother's bed, she woke to find Beck gently tucking a blanket around her. "You should go back to the hotel and get some real sleep," he whispered. Sienna shook her head. "I need to be here if she wakes up." Beck knelt beside her chair. "I know. But you need to take care of yourself too. I can stay and call you immediately. If anything changes—" "You have a company to run," Sienna protested weakly. "I have a woman I love whose grandmother is sick," Beck corrected her. "The company can wait." Sienna looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth of his transformation. The old Beck Wilder would never have put someone else's needs above his business. The new Beck didn't hesitate. "Thank you," she whispered, touching his face. "For being here. For being you." 3 days later, Eloise opened her eyes. Though weak and unable to speak clearly, she was alert enough to recognize Sienna and Beck. When the doctors confirmed she was out of immediate danger, Sienna finally allowed herself to exhale. "She's going to need rehabilitation," the neurologist explained. "Speech therapy, physical therapy, it's going to be a long road." "I'll stay in Chicago," Sienna said immediately. "I'll contact Estelle and explain—" "Or," Beck interrupted gently, "we could bring the best rehabilitation specialists to New York. Set up everything she needs in your apartment, or mine, whichever has better accessibility." Sienna looked at him in surprise. "You'd do that?" "Of course," Beck said simply. "She's your family. That makes her important to me too." 2 weeks later, Eloise was transferred to a private rehabilitation facility in New York. Sienna had negotiated with Estelle to complete her contract obligations with shoots in New York only, allowing her to be present for her grandmother's recovery. Beck was true to his word, sparing no expense to ensure Eloise received the best care possible. But more importantly, he was present, visiting regularly, bringing books he knew she enjoyed, sitting with her during therapy sessions when Sienna had work commitments. One evening, as Sienna and Beck left the rehabilitation center, Eloise called Sienna back. "That man loves you," she said, her speech still slightly slurred from the stroke. "Real love, not the shiny kind." Sienna smiled. "I know, Grandma. And you love him too," Eloise continued. "So why are you still holding back?" The question stayed with Sienna that night. As she lay beside Beck in his penthouse, she finally admitted the truth to herself. She had been waiting for him to fail, to revert to the person he was before, because that would be easier than risking her heart completely. "Beck," she whispered, not sure if he was still awake. "I love you." He turned to her in the darkness. "What did you say?" "I love you," she repeated, stronger this time. "I've been afraid to say it, afraid to fully believe in this. But I'm not afraid anymore." Beck gathered her in his arms, his kiss filled with a year's worth of patience and longing. "What changed?" "I did," Sienna said simply. "I finally realized you've shown me who you are, over and over again, not with words or promises, but with choices and actions, and I believe you now." In the months that followed, their lives grew increasingly intertwined. Eloise moved into Sienna's apartment once she was released from rehabilitation. Beck sold his penthouse, too many stairs for Eloise's visits, he explained, and bought a spacious apartment in a building with better accessibility. "We could live together," he suggested one evening as they discussed the new place. "All of us, if you're ready." Sienna took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready." With Eloise's health improving steadily, Sienna turned her attention to a project she'd been considering for years, a foundation to support young designers from underrepresented backgrounds. She called it the Eloise Monet Foundation, in honor of her grandmother's legacy as a seamstress. Beck offered his business expertise, but insisted the foundation remain entirely hers. "This is your vision," he told her. "I'm just here to support, however you need me." As plans for the foundation's launch gala took shape, Beck grew mysteriously busy with a project of his own. He was vague about the details, claiming it was a surprise. The night of the gala arrived on a perfect spring evening. The venue, a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn, not far from Jake's loft, was transformed with soft lighting and minimalist decorations that let the young designers' work take center stage. Sienna wore a gown created by one of the foundation's first grant recipients, a talented designer from Chicago's South Side. As she prepared to address the gathering of fashion industry leaders, investors, and media, she felt a wave of pride and purpose. Beck had been mysteriously absent most of the day, arriving just minutes before the event began. He looked handsome but different. His suit was well made but not the custom designer wear he usually chose for public appearances. "Where have you been?" Sienna whispered as he joined her near the stage. "Taking care of something important," he replied, kissing her cheek. "You look breathtaking." As Sienna took the stage to officially launch the foundation, she spoke from the heart about her grandmother's influence, about the importance of opportunity, about fashion as both art and accessibility. "This foundation exists to ensure that talent, not privilege, determines who shapes our industry's future," she concluded to enthusiastic applause. The evening was a tremendous success. Major fashion houses pledged support, media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, and the young designers showcased their work to influential industry figures. As the event began to wind down, Beck approached Sienna, who was chatting with a magazine editor. "Excuse me," he said politely to the editor. "May I borrow Sienna for a moment?" Beck led her to a quiet corner of the venue, his expression unusually serious. "What is it?" Sienna asked, suddenly concerned. "Is something wrong?" Beck shook his head. "Nothing's wrong. Everything is finally right." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you." Sienna took the envelope, puzzled. "What is it?" "Open it," he urged softly. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "I lost the world and found something more valuable. You." Sienna looked up at Beck, her heart racing. "Beck," he took her hands in his. "I realized something today. For all our talking about what matters, I've never actually shown you how completely my priorities have changed." "What do you mean?" "The suit I'm wearing," Beck said. "It's borrowed from Jake. The watch too. I came here tonight with nothing that money bought. No designer labels, no status symbols. Just me, Beck Wilder, the man who fell in love with you when he had nothing else to offer." Sienna felt tears welling in her eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Beck said earnestly, "to remind us both of what's real between us. It's not about what I have or who you are to the world. It's about who we are to each other." He dropped to one knee and Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. "I'm not offering you diamonds or mansions or private jets," Beck said, his voice steady and sure. "I'm offering you my heart, my life, my future, whatever it holds. Will you marry me, Sienna?" Sienna looked around at the gala she had created, at her grandmother watching with happy tears from a nearby table, at the man kneeling before her, the man who had lost everything and become more in the losing. She pulled Beck to his feet, and for the first time kissed him where everyone could see, a public declaration of a private truth they had both finally embraced completely. "Yes," she whispered against his lips, 1,000 times yes. The applause that erupted around them barely registered as Beck lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle of pure joy. Later that night, as they walked hand in hand through the Brooklyn streets, just as they had during those transformative weeks when Beck had nothing, Sienna felt a sense of completion. "You know," she said, "for someone who started by sending me diamond bracelets and sports cars, you proposed without a ring." Beck laughed. "Does that bother you?" Sienna shook her head, squeezing his hand. "It's perfect, because I don't need a ring to know what we have is real." "We can get one tomorrow if you want," Beck offered. "No," Sienna said thoughtfully. "Let's design one together, something that tells our story." "And what story is that?" Beck asked, pulling her close as they walked. Sienna smiled up at him, her heart full. "The story of what's left when the lights go out. When the glamour fades and the money's gone and all that remains is what truly matters." "And what matters?" Beck whispered, though he already knew the answer. "This," Sienna said simply. "Us, the people we've become together. The love we found, when everything else was lost." As they walked through the Brooklyn night, their future stretching before them, both knew with absolute certainty that they had found something most people search for all their lives, a love based not on what they had, but on who they truly were, and that was worth more than all the fortunes in the world.